Hello and welcome to Cricket and Wrestling for Us. And today we've got another special guest, the amazing, the admirable, the intellectual, known as Alex Walden, a very dear friend of mine. And thankfully, he's given me the time to discuss about his wrestling memories, why he got into wrestling, why he hasn't seen wrestling in however long. How you doing, man?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh,
Appreciate it. I like the intro. Nearly all alliterative words there, and then just intelligence at the end.
I thought, what could I say instead of intelligence, which starts with A, and I was like, let's just go with intelligence. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's go with it. Anyways, yeah, glad you could join us. So let's start from the beginning then, right? What is your first, your earliest memory of wrestling?
My earliest memory, and I must have been very young at this point, was probably maybe seeing some NWO stuff from like in a magazine, like in a wrestling magazine in a shop. And it was, I kind of knew who Hulk Hogan was from other things. Like I knew his movies more than I knew him as a wrestler, which I suppose is very odd. And then I saw him in this black gear, and I picked up the magazine. I was like, oh, this looks cool. What's this? And I think from that point, I was like, okay, wrestling might be something that I want to watch. And then unbeknownst to me, obviously that was WCW. I didn't realize that wasn't WWF. So I started watching WWF. I was like, there's no Hogan here. Where's the Hogan? Of course, by this point in that era, most of their new gen stars had fucked off. And it was in the Attitude Era. So I was sat there looking like, where's Marty Jannetty? Where's Roddy Piper? Nowhere. All gone.
Wow. So you literally picked up that magazine and thought to yourself, I want to watch it. It's like you picking up a comic book for Superman and then going to see Iron Man 1.
Exactly. And being like, where is Superman? Why isn't he in this film?
Oh, man. Do you know what? I must say that is the most unique story I've heard so far. But the funny thing is, WCW at one point was bigger than WWF. No doubts about that. In the mid-90s, late 90s, it really was. So I completely get where you're coming from. For me, in Pakistan, WWF was paid television and WCW wasn't free television. So obviously, being an Asian, we watched the free television and we saw WCW. And I got into Bret Hart, I got into Goldberg, and I didn't like Hulk Hogan, right? Because he was the bad guy, right? Obviously, right? But in terms of the way you're mentioning, his movies and then, his cool black clothes and stuff like that, he did look cool. I can't argue that. It's just the fact that he was a bad guy. So I was like, no, I am good man. I only like good people. And I talk like a caveman.
It's very strange because you talk to a lot of wrestling fans that are a couple of years older than us, in their late 30s, early 40s, and they were there for the Hulkamania era. And it's obviously Hulk Hogan was the baby face. He was the face of wrestling. We came into it kind of with his periphery stuff after that had died down, and this is post the steroid trial. It's very strange. It's very strange.
Thing is, you mentioned that Hulkamania, right? That was early 80s till early 90s, or late 70s to early 90s. And I thought to myself, I was like, I know nothing of that Hulk Hogan. The only part I know about that Hulk Hogan is when he came back in WWE in early 2000s. Before that, all I knew was the bad guy Hogan, right? Never knew the good guy. I remember my brother used to talk about it. Oh, Hulk Hogan's cool. I was like, no, he isn't. He's a bad guy. Right? That was my first thing. And he's like, no, he's in the NWO. You have to support Goldberg because Goldberg's a cool, good guy. And obviously, we used to have discussions about that. But definitely, man, if we were in that era, it'll be very hard to hate Hulk Hogan when he shifted into that, NWO, WCW kind of role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Okay, that's good. I'm glad it's not a generic thing. Oh, I put the TV on and then I saw wrestling and thought interesting. People beating each other up.
I was promised WCW and I got WWF. The one time in history where WWF wasn't the biggest company. I started watching WWF when they were the underdog in the wrestling world.
Wow. You can say that. You can use that. And people will say, you must be really old. No. I was 5. because they'll be like, oh, you're talking about the 70s, 80s when WWF was around, and everything was everything was
the regional companies. Yeah.
Right. By the way, just as a side note, there's a TV show called Heels with Stephen Amell, and I don't know if you've heard of it. It's about wrestling. Stephen Amell is the guy who played Arrow on the Green Arrow show.
Okay.
Yeah. So him in this show is so good. The show is actually quite good. Like it's 8-9 episodes. It's just about this small wrestling company in somewhere in the Midwest of America called Duffy Wrestling League or something like that. Okay. It's a very entertaining show. I would highly recommend it for, if you're bored and let's say you have nothing to do till 11 o'clock at night, I would say you watch it, right? Just watch it for the fun of it.
I'll give it a go. I'm trying to get back into more wrestling now, so I'm trying to kind of go back and watch the older stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of want to go further back than the more recent stuff. Like I can do without the mid-2000s. Like
Alex, I think I mentioned this. I hadn't seen wrestling between 2006 and 2017. Right? I didn't watch it for 11 years. The only reason I got back into it because I heard Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar in like 20 seconds or something, and then I got into it. And I got into it so much that I have just been completely into it since then. So. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy in terms of how people get back into wrestling and check out the older stuff as well. So I kind of tried to catch up between 2006 and 2017. A lot of really bad stuff, Alex. A lot of not very good things.
So like that, I genuinely still say that was for me, it was maybe like 2005 to like. Probably like 2012 was like the dark days of wrestling where like I just gave up.
Wow. Speaking of giving up on wrestling, right? Who was your favorite wrestler back in the day when you used to watch it properly?
God, again, because I kind of came in during like, I guess the sort of start/rise of the Attitude Era.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly, it was D-Generation. It was Shawn Michaels and Triple H. It was D-Generation X as a whole were my favorite because they were like pulling pranks and fucking over everyone. And I was like, that's pretty good. But probably individually, maybe The Rock. Maybe The Rock was my favorite at the time just because he had more charisma than anyone else, I felt at the time. You have the lead up to like WrestleMania X7 in 2001. With like him and Steve Austin, like the main event. Like there was so much there. Like there was such a focus on storyline and these two much bigger characters than I think they've had in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. And I just sided with The Rock. I just thought he was way cool.
Do you know what? Speaking of The Rock, dude is Black Adam now anyway. So it's how he's changed his entire career. Scorpion King. And now he's the biggest, the most expensive actor in Hollywood, right? See how things change in 20 years, Alex. But the one thing that doesn't change, it's Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who is still the owner of WWE.
That will never change. There is not enough Saudi Arabian oil money in the world to wrest that contract from Vince McMahon's hands.
Oh, that's crazy. But that's true. That's true. He's not going to go away until, God forbid, he just lies there for a little while. I shouldn't really say this stuff. I hope he's healthy.
I think you can say it because I don't think he'll die. I think he will genuinely continue living forever just through sheer force of will.
Yeah. Do you know what he needs is a Green Lantern ring, and he can just keep going for eternity. Right, you mentioned, like you said, D-Generation X, The Rock, so pretty much the Attitude Era. So let's talk about something slightly more recent then, okay? So the last time, probably a couple of years ago, I guess, you don't watch wrestling properly, like religiously or anything at the moment, but what's the most recent memory of yours in terms of a wrestling match you saw or a promo or some sort of segment in a wrestling show? And what do you think is the difference between what's happening now and what was happening back in the Attitude Era, when you got into it? What's happened in the last 15, 20 years to, if you talk about numbers have declined exponentially. But in terms of the interest people have, in terms of, you going away from wrestling, then myself as well. So what could be the reason? And I just want your thoughts on that.
Some of the more recent stuff, like I've seen some of the promos for, like AEW. I've seen, some of the stuff from a couple of years ago where they were pushing like Becky Lynch and kind of women's wrestling a lot more.
Yeah.
I think from what I can tell as an outsider is there has been a massive culture shift from when we were kids.
Yeah.
In that, I feel like they had a really hard dip in terms of character work, and then you had your CM Punk kind of like laying, that his whole heel run of like laying down the truth and like being very like shoot real, and tearing away kayfabe. I feel like we very much gotten into the era of smart marks, where wrestling companies and the writers these days know that the primary audience isn't like kids to sell toys to anymore. Now the primary audience is the older fans who lived through Hulkamania, the New Gen era, Attitude era, who have seen the cycles happen again and again, and who know more about behind the scenes than before.
Right. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think you can't talk about wrestling at the moment without talking about AEW. I think it's probably the best thing to have happened to wrestling in maybe the last 15 years, just to have that competition. As well as that, I think obviously we've seen a shift from, you look at like WCW, like ECW, which was like mental and like incredibly dangerous. So I think like in the early 2000s, you did see those more extreme companies go out of business because they just couldn't keep topping themselves. Oh, we've got a steel cage match. Okay, well next is going to be a steel cage match where the cage is on fire. The next one's going to be a steel cage match where the ring is on fire, and it's a handicap match of one guy versus it's Diamond Dallas Page versus every other wrestler that's ever existed. Like wheel out the Rock's dad, bring him back. Like I think that after that kind of fell, they saw like, right, calm it down. Let's focus merchandise on a couple of really relatable baby faces that we can push. And then you had that, again, early 2010s thing of like, it got a bit better. You got like the Shield breaking up was good. Like you had now more characters. Daniel Bryan coming in, like again, making kind of a push for this almost like unknown to try and build somebody new. Because I think the problem was for about 10 years, they didn't really build anyone properly.
They still haven't, Alex.
Yeah, maybe 20 years. 20 years, they've not built anyone. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest difference. I think they forgot how to build characters. They're trying to do it a bit more now, I think. And the reason that they're trying to do it is because they understand that they're not selling merchandise to 5-year-olds anymore. They're probably actually selling merchandise to the adult fan base who are marks, but who do know what's going on.
Yeah. No, I think one thing you mentioned about behind the scenes earlier, that behind the scenes, you know about kayfabe, you know about like a lot of other stuff that honestly, until I restarted watching wrestling, I got no clue. I just knew about, the wrestling is fake, but you actually get hurt. But at the same time, there's some characters, like, there's some weird characters, there's some fun characters. And I used to like the Goldberg toy and the Bret Hart toy and the Rock toy, right? So as a kid, that's what I was thinking. But now it is more with the fact of, like, I watch YouTube channels. I read wrestling articles because I'm like, I want to know more about what's happening in the background. What's going to happen in a few weeks? What is the mindset of the people directing and writing? So it's become, for me at least, it's become more of watching a process of a movie rather than a process of just watching a show. Just watching the show, not thinking about what's happened before or what's going to happen afterwards. And that's why that TV show Heels that I mentioned, no, they haven't sponsored me, Alex. Don't worry. It's just the fact that I really liked it. It tells you a bit of the inner workings about, characters and what they like, what they don't like, how do they manage things. It's good. Definitely give it a watch. And for everyone watching, please do give it a watch as well. Just one more thing in terms of what you said. I think you mentioned, breaking up the Shield, Daniel Bryan, stuff like that. One person they have done right over the past year and a half is Roman Reigns. Because finally, he is now a heel. Okay? He's now the bad guy that he needed to be 6 years ago. Okay? But no one else Genuinely, no one else. Dude, guess who Roman Reigns fought in the most recent match? Have a guess.
Seth Rollins. I don't know. Is he still in there?
Close. Seth Rollins fought Edge.
Okay.
Roman Reigns fought Brock Lesnar.
How do they still use Brock Lesnar?
Exactly. Now, next, I want to mention another thing. Guess who Bobby Lashley faced? Have a guess.
I'm gonna try and pick somebody who I
don't
know
expect.
but wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Mark Henry. I don't know.
That's okay. Not very close, but close enough. It's an older guy who's a big buffed up dude. It was Goldberg. He's 54 years old.
No,
it was Goldberg.
No new talent.
So that's what I'm saying. Yes, it was a Saudi show, whatever, right? But even then, the way they're selling everything is on the basis of their older people, and then some of the young faces, some meaning the people from the Shield, because the third member of the Shield went to AEW and has been doing amazing things with Dean Ambrose, aka John Moxley, right? He's done great things in AEW. Now he's unfortunately in rehab and stuff, getting some treatment. But yeah, hopefully he recovers and everything. But all in all, right, WWE is finding it difficult to make new stars. But what AEW did with two people, I don't know if you've heard these names before, or you might have heard them, but you probably will not see them. Have you heard of Darby Allin and MJF?
Yes.
Right? Okay. You don't watch wrestling properly. You know who Darby Allin and MJF are.
I've heard of these people.
And that's what I'm saying. If I came to you and I said, Alex, do you know who Humberto Carrillo is? Do you know who Keith Lee is?
No, but that is the single most boring name I've ever heard.
I must say, Keith Lee is a really good wrestler. He was just fired 3 days ago or something from WWE because they just killed his character, moving up from NXT into Raw and stuff. Literally killed his character and then said, "We feed you to the fishes," because now he's out of the company. It's madness.
He will be on New Japan in a week.
Oh man, he should. He's really good. He's a big dude, right? Big dude who does somersaults, who does flips. He's like 6'3" and weighs like 300 pounds and does stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's crazy.
Impressive.
So yeah, basically what I was trying to say was you have not heard of these guys, and these guys have been around for at least a year and a half, 2 years, same time as AEW's been on, and you know about those guys. The way AEW's handled new wrestlers, new stars, it's been a lot more impressive. Plus, they got Sting, right? Obviously, Sting's great, right? On top of that, there's really good things. Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho. You've got Hangman Page or Adam Page. I don't know if you've heard of him. One of the best baby faces on that show, in my opinion. They literally, you know, when you have a character development in actual TV shows, where it goes from high, low, and then eventually they get that one good thing, and that sets him for life. That's literally his character. First, everyone hated him because they thought, oh, why is he a good guy? Why shouldn't he, why is he in this tag team? He should be doing this, he should be doing that. Then he developed a drinking problem within the storyline. Then he joined a group called the Dark Order, which Brody Lee was heading, and then Brody Lee passed last year in real life. So he kind of joined forces with them. He went away, he recovered, he came back, and now he's fighting for the title over this weekend, the coming weekend. So the way they've kind of woven characters and storylines, as you mentioned earlier, it is honestly really, really impressive, and I hope WWE does it, because otherwise I don't want to just watch AEW. I want to watch like a variety of wrestling shows, ideally.
That's the thing. I think it's interesting what you were saying about how, like, think of the most recent interesting matchups, and they've all been stars from the 90s, early 2000s, minus the 3 or 4 people they actually managed to build it around 2010.
Yeah.
Again, exactly like you said with the new babyface. Again, taking the Shield as an example, started as a group. Then they kind of wrote them in some Discord so that they split up. And then they all went on, like Dean Ambrose as well as Seth Rollins, all went on to have incredibly strong singles careers. And apart from those guys, everyone else is in their 50s.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar doesn't count because I'm pretty sure Brock Lesnar is fueled by rage and I don't know what else. Like,
you know what? I'll tell you another person, AJ Styles. You know of AJ Styles from like ages ago, right?
Yeah.
Right? He's still in WWE. But Daniel Bryan is not Daniel Bryan anymore. He's in AEW as Bryan Danielson, which is his real name, right? Just imagine WWE changed his real name from Bryan Danielson to Daniel Bryan because that's the innovativeness that they had at the time.
Apparently that's an old thing in wrestling because like Shawn Michaels' real name is like Michael Shawn, like that's his first name and his middle name. And so many people do that where they literally just take their names, reverse them, and they go, right, that's my wrestling name. So, and again, I don't think this is just wrestling. I think this is pop culture, and that's a different conversation that we'll have at another time.
Yeah.
But like pop culture itself is so increasingly self-referential. It's so nostalgia focused nearly constantly now.
Yeah.
That it's agonizing. We want something new. We want something fresh, but they know here are these properties from the 80s and 90s. Let's just redo those and it'll be enough. And the wrestling world is the same and they're banking on it. And I think the one thing AEW is doing right is saying, yes, we have some older stars, but here's our newer stars coming through. WWE seems to always be, I mean, how long did the streak go with The Undertaker to the point where he was actually a corpse pulled by strings? Like,
at least Brock Lesnar beat him. Otherwise, they were going to be like, nah, we're just going to keep going for this. We're just
I watched that match live. I watched that WrestleMania. I think it was 35 maybe?
31, 30 or 31. It was one of those.
Oh, okay. In which case, whichever one it was, like I watched it live at a bar because all of my friends came around and said, oh, we'll watch WrestleMania together because they're airing it at this joint. So we sat there and we watched it and Brock Lesnar broke the streak and we were all just like, that's the worst. That's the absolute worst thing that could have happened. Like, even back then, Brock Lesnar was considered a non-entity of wrestling. Like, they wheel him out twice a year, maybe, because he's a nightmare creature.
He is. Do you know what? He is a scary man, though. Like, honestly, if you see him now, when you get a chance, Google Brock Lesnar 2021. You would love him the way he looks. You can do it now. You can do it later.
I'm going to Google now.
Google up.
Because I firmly remember Brock Lesnar
2021. Because I'm going to tell you, he has a beard, he has a ponytail, and he wears like that
flannel sleeveless t-shirt.
He looks like a lumberjack. Genuinely, he looks good, right?
Like he's still in great shape. Like, you know, obviously he's a massive guy and he works very hard to maintain that. Yeah. But like, he looks so much less threatening now. Like some kind of Sons of Anarchy.
Yep.
Kind of ripoff. Oh my god! And there are multiple sleeveless.
Oh yes, he is. He is that guy now. He's the sleeveless shirt guy.
Oh my god.
Anyways, that's great. Right. Okay. I'll ask you last question. Mm-hmm. Right. If you had to pick your favorite wrestler at the moment, right, based on what you know, based on what you've seen over the past few years, who would that wrestler be?
Well, he said CM Punk's back, and I'm excited after his amazing foray into the real fighting world. It went super well for him. I'm very excited to see him back. So maybe him. I've always loved Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, as he is forever known for. I've always loved him. I always thought he was so simple, but like incredibly technically gifted. Like he knew how to sell. He was great at ring psychology. Like he was to me like the full package of what a wrestler can be without like being drenched in gimmicks.
Yeah,
because a lot of them have been very gimmick heavy. Again, probably since you know the kind of new gen era where they try to give everyone a gimmick.
Yeah,
like the IRS was a character for a while. For God's sake, that was just weird. Erwin R. Shyster. Like, after, you know.
Why do you remember that as well?
I think that's so funny that Vince McMahon made a character entirely out of spite for the tax service. I love that. But I feel like he's such a competent, skilled person that I'm excited to get back into it and see what he's doing these days. Obviously, he was out injured for a while, I think.
Yeah.
A fair chunk.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited to see him back. I don't know. Do you have a favorite currently?
Right. It's really tough to get a current one. What I say a lot of the time is I like Darby Allin if I was going with AEW. I'm a pretty big Darby Allin fan. I think he's really cool. But in WWE right now, I think I got to go with Roman Reigns just for the fact that, you know, he's a baddie. He's a heel, but his character is probably the best character on WWE television right now. If you talked about NXT like a year ago, I would have named like 2-3 people easily. But because they've let so many people go, they've changed what NXT is. They've done so many crazy things, WWE, that I can't go past Roman Reigns in my head. I can't go past, unfortunately, Darby. Well, I can go past Darby Allin. You got CM Punk, you got Kenny Omega, you got Chris Jericho, you got Bryan Danielson, you got Jon Moxley. There's names. See, AEW, I named 6 people. I can't name anyone else in WWE, unfortunately, but that might be my oversight. But anyways, thank you, Alex. Honestly, it has been a pleasure. It's been a while since we chatted, so thank you so much. Anyways, thank you, everyone. Until next time, take care, stay safe. Catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.